Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our second session of the Strengthening Collaboration Between Youth and Parent Peer Support series. We're really glad that you're here. Very happy that you're able to join us today. We do have a couple of housekeeping things we need to do before we actually get started. But while we're doing that, if you wouldn't mind, just in the chat box, just take a minute, put in your name, your organization, your role, and where you're located. As part of our session, we need to provide you with this disclaimer. This presentation was prepared by NTAC, National Training and Technical Assistance Center, under our cooperative agreement with SAMHSA. So this event is supported by SAMHSA, but the contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of SAMHSA, HHS, or the U.S. government. And also, while we hope this does not happen, we hope we have no security issues whatsoever, but we live in a digital world and this does occur. In the event that that may happen, the session's going to immediately end, and then you'll be notified by email about how to rejoin a new session. So this link will not be any good. You will get a new link to be able to rejoin. So our NTAC sessions are put together and offered by an incredible group of partners. And you can see here on the screen, these are our national partners that come together to use their expertise and their subject matter knowledge to help inform the field by creating products, creating resources, and doing sessions like this one to enhance the behavioral and mental health fields. As a center, this is our vision. All children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges will have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. We serve a wide cross-sector audience, including everyone from state leaders to providers, to the school workforce, infant and early childhood providers, community-based providers, peer supervisors, family partners, youth partners, and pretty much anybody who is out there to support youth and families. Our services range from individual consultation to more in-depth sessions like the one we're offering today, to peer learning exchanges and tools that you can use in your daily work. Our aim is to really create these outlets for communication, for collaboration and resource sharing amongst all of us. Please make sure to check out all of our resources and our archived presentations on our website, or you can go to the Contact Us link there to request consultation or training. I think Joanne may drop the website in there so everybody has access to it into the chat. So we also want to address just real quickly some commonly asked questions that come up during our sessions to let you know. In the follow-up email for today's session, you'll receive a certificate of completion, a link to the recording of this session, and a copy of the slide deck that's being shown today. You should also have received a copy of the slide deck maybe in the reminder email that was sent earlier today or yesterday. I'm not sure if that happens with every session. Sometimes it does. So you may already have that. So now we're done with housekeeping. We want to welcome you again to today's session. We are going to talk about addressing conflict because we do not always agree and we're not always going to agree. We are all here today bringing our lived experience and also bringing our professional experience as youth and parent peer support providers. I'm Millie Sweeney. I am the Director of Learning and Workforce Development at FREDLA. I'm also a TA specialist with NTAC. FREDLA is a partner in the National Training and Technical Assistance Center. I am a clinician by training, but I basically use my parent hat every day. I do have 2 young adults who have emotional and behavioral challenges. I want to introduce our experts from the field. Christy, do you want to go first and then Catherine?
Sure. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. I am Christy Corbin. I am the president of Family Support Partners of Virginia. We are a statewide organization that provides formal peer support to parents and youth. And I also am a parent with the experiences of navigating our child behavioral health system here in Virginia with my youngest daughter, who brought me to this work. Catherine?
Thanks, Christy. Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Shackelford. I use she, her pronouns. I am a youth peer support partner in the state of Virginia. I also work for Family Support Partners of Virginia. Christy's my boss, so there's that disclaimer. Yeah, I utilize my own lived experience of navigating the systems as an adolescent, justice involvement, lots of school challenges and mental health concerns, substance use concerns, all the things I kind of went through as an adolescent. So I support peers today in learning how to advocate for themselves and utilize resources available to them. I also get the opportunity to supervise all of our other youth support partners at our agency, which I love to do, which is a not really a new hat, but still it feels like a new hat, and I don't feel qualified to do it because of like kind of where I came from. And so I think that it supports them to know that, they have the opportunity to share their lived experience in the same way that I get to. So yeah, that's us.
Glad to have you here. And last but definitely not least, Tay.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. It's so good to see. I'm looking at the participant list, and I know some folks out there, and I see some folks from the last session. So it's so great to have y'all. So if you know me, you probably know my little spiel, but I'm going to give it to you anyways. So hello, hello, hello. My name is Ark Telos Saint Amor. It is a very long name, so most folks call me Tay. But my name actually feels super affirming and honoring to me. So any combination of my name is going to feel great to me. My mandatory pronouns are they, them, their, and I'm the executive director of Youth Move National, which is a partner organization with NTAC. It's also an organization that has a national youth peer support program and curriculum. We train the workforces of several states. We do national cohorts. So if you're interested in exploring sort of like what a national lens looks like with youth peer support, please reach out. I am also someone like sort of everybody else here, right, who has immense lived and living experience. Matter of fact, I have so much. I'd love to give some of it back, to be honest. But yes, lots of lived and living experience, both as a youth and as an adult, being system impacted, navigating the system, such as the juvenile justice system, the carceral system, uh, foster care, welfare. Um, Houselessness, gosh, you name it. And so it's just always a pleasure to be among folks who really care about peer support. I know that's something that really made a huge difference for me, both when I was growing up, but also still now. And it's something that I love that I'm still involved with. So that's all to say. Hello, everybody, and we're so glad that y'all here. And I am actually going to keep us going. So let's kind of look at what we're going to do. So right now, if you can perceive your screen, you are currently in the first key point. So we are doing our welcoming, our series purpose, and we're about to do collaborative agreements, which I always get so excited to do. Then we're going to move into why would we disagree with each other? Which does, as Millie pointed out, it does happen 1,000%. So what does that look like, right? What does that look like when that comes up? And then possibly more important, the next key point that we'll sort of touch upon is how do we address it, right? How are we addressing then those conflicts that come up between youth and parent peer supporters? And then, because we're going to be doing a lot of talking, we're going to kind of turn it over to y'all, and we're going to have hopefully a really great and vibrant participatory session walking through some scenarios. So we'll get y'all out in breakout groups and then hopefully do a debrief of what you learned from walking through those scenarios. And then we'll close it up. We'll do a closing reflection, and then we will talk about our next session at the end, which we hope that y'all continue to join us, which I think is coming up on March 12th. So we will talk about that lastly. Okay, so with that, let's make sure that we are on the same page as far as how we want to be in community with each other today. I think it's really important, whether you're in a space in which you're doing breakout groups or participating or not, safe and affirming spaces are always really important, no matter where you're at. If you're at work, at home, at the grocery store, right, with your peer supporter, virtually, wherever you're at, safe and affirming spaces are really, really important. Here's the thing, though. No one can guarantee you a safe space. I wish we could, right? I wish we all had a magical, we could probably really use it right now, if I'm being honest. I would take that magical wand right now and create the world to be a safe place. But we really can't guarantee that. But we can try to make it as much as possible an affirming space, a brave space. But we do that through actions, right? We don't just do it through words. We have to do it through tangible actions. And so the last session, we sort of came through and we talked about some community agreements. We have someone that are sort of, if you can perceive your screen, already up. And I think we widely sort of just accepted these and thought they were really good for our time together in this space. But I still want to review them because I know some folks weren't at that first session. So the first is this sort of generally, we're going to make sure that we're using affirming, respectful, recovery, or wellness. I like kind of wellness over recovery, orientated based language, person first language, right? And all that we do today. Hopefully it's going to be strength based and hopeful, but I'm going to add a big old asterisk to that to say, please just come as you are. It is a rough time for a lot of folks out there. Toxic positivity can do more harm than good. And really what we're just saying is like that deficit model is a little outdated. We're trying to focus on what we can do, how we can move forward, how can we endure, what are those strengths that we all have, right? But ultimately, please just come as you are. We're going to be inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experience. Please, please, please. There is not a whole lot of this going on right now, so I hope we can lean into this for our time together. Healing centered and trauma responsive, always, always so important. Inviting to individuals to participate in their own journeys. I'm kind of famous for saying I statements, right? So really just making sure that we're knowing that what we're representing is just ourselves. It's the only thing we're experts on, right? So kind of avoid that sort of broad generalization, avoid speaking for others, don't steal people's agency or consent, right? To talk about what matters to them, right? So really making sure we're honoring sort of diverse perspectives. Person first and free of labels, non-judgment and avoiding of assumptions, respectful, clear, and understandable, but in a good non-ableist way, because I think there's some ways we could misinterpret that. We just mean, hey, let's be respectful to each other, and consistent with our actions, policies, and products, with also an asterisk that we're all imperfect and we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, right? As long as we recognize those mistakes, we apologize, we move forward, and most importantly, we try to work on it, right? We try to do better next time. So as much as we can, be consistent with our actions, but hey, we all learn, change, and grow. Next, we actually have a couple of special ones that we pulled out that I think is really important. And that is, this is a protective space. So what is shared in this space stays in this space, right? So the stories are confidential. They stay amongst us here, but the knowledge, the learning, that's what goes out into the world, right? We hope you take that with you and we hope you spread it everywhere, right? We hope that that knowledge and learning is the thing that leaves sort of these virtual walls. But the stories, right, those personal perspectives, that is confidential and hopefully can just stay between us in this room. Then lastly, two more for you. Understanding over judging, right? So engage in active listening to understand and learn with curiosity, not judgment. And then generally, what all of these kind of boil down to, if you will, is just respect, right? We're going to try to respect and honor each other and the diversity of sort of our own perspectives. So I know that was a lot. I know we kind of moved fast through these and I sort of talked at you. But if I could we just get some emojis in the chat or just wherever, just say, does this sound good? Can we sort of agree to this? It feels good and affirming. Okay, I'm seeing it go up. This is awesome. Okay. I'm mathing in my head. We've got 10. Oh, it's going up now. Okay. All right. Seeing lots. Okay. I'm just going to call it and say, I think it seems like we're on the same page, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Things like this are really, really important.
Mhm.
So let's do it now, right? Like let's move into it. So Millie, I think we're going to do some Menti polls. Am I correct with that?
We are going to do some Menti polls. We're going to hop into our content. First of all, asking everybody, and we're going to do this by polling, why could we disagree? Why would we have conflict as a parent peer support provider or a youth peer support provider? What types of things cause us to disagree? You can go to menti.com and you can use the code that you're seeing on the screen, 36874851. And Joanne put this in the chat, so you can just click on a link, which makes it really easy. And if you'll just put in, you can answer more than once. What are areas of disagreement or conflict between these two roles? And I see some people putting it in the chat as well. I see that popped up, individualities there. Let's see, ideas for what works. Yes, our approaches are different because our perspectives are different. Who we're there to support is different. Our experiences are definitely different, and we may have a negative experience in one area where the person, our colleague that we're working with, has had a positive experience there. So we're coming to it from a different place. Fear, I could see where that goes in. Youth versus parents. There is a power differential there, or kind of an expected power differential between our two roles, because one may be older than the other. One is a parent and one is a young adult. So that could cause some conflict. Roles and responsibilities for sure. Geographical location. Oh, what defines a crisis? Yes, because that is individual. That is so individual. What's a crisis for me may not be a crisis for you. Who we support, we stick to what works. Assumptions, we all know what you say about assumptions. What does that mean? I won't spell it out here, but it's not good for either one of us. Our beliefs, how we speak with those that we support, how we speak to each other. We lost the word cloud there. There we go. Thanks, Joanne. Lack of empathy, that would definitely cause some disagreement and some conflict. Different priorities. Okay, someone put cold switching. I'm not sure I know what that means. Can you elaborate on that in the chat? What is cold switching? And am I showing my age by saying that? So ways of communicating, lifestyle, stubbornness, opposing objectives. Wow. So what I'm noticing about this, there are a couple that are coming up as larger font, which means more people put in that type of answer. But overall, they're kind of all the same size almost, which means there's a lot of areas in which we may butt heads as we're working together, and for a lot of really valid reasons that this would happen. And so that's why we wanted to have a whole session on this, because we wanted to find out exactly what can we do when we do disagree. Before we do that though, we can go ahead and close this one out, Joanne. And we'll have this as part of the resources. Everybody will have a copy of this. Are you still seeing the slide? I can't tell if it's still up.
It is not up, Millie.
It is not up. Okay, let me share again.
And while you're sharing that, I also don't know what cold switching is, but I do know what code switching is. And I think that that's actually fairly applicable, right? When we think of the ways in which we feel like we need to be perceived, the ways in which we need to conform to different environments, to conform to different people, for whatever reason, out of fear, comfort, security, what have you, right? And so I could see that, right? Having to code switch, right? Whether you're a youth with, oh gosh, I've got to act differently around my caregiver. I have to act differently when I'm at school or with my friends. I've got to switch, right? I got to do that code switching. Or even, right, as like a caregiver, right? you may also be struggling with your own things, and you're like, well, I can't show that. I can't be vulnerable. I got to switch, right? I got to switch to being this like sort of paternalistic, like, no, it's okay. I'm strong and got it. Or like, no, I've got to tell you what to do. So I do see like the code switching just adding a whole nother level of complexity. So I really, really appreciate
Well
that being
said.
thrown in there.
That makes total sense. And as a parent, you do that too. So thank you. That makes a whole lot of sense. Before we actually get into, what are some things you can do about that, let's hear from the field what this looks like from Christy and Catherine as they are working together with families.
Thanks,
Catherine.
Millie. I loved the Minty poll. Y'all had some really good ideas, and I was like, yes, check. Okay, yeah, like all the time. Yeah, lots of it. So good stuff, everyone. So I'm gonna share from the perspective of the youth peer supporter. So lots of different things. And when we were coming up with this, I was like, I can't just name a few. So I'm glad we did the Minty. But one of the biggest ones that I see a lot is so we are young adults that are providing peer support, and we connect in a way that other providers or guardians may not be able to connect with these individuals, right? So oftentimes we are able to build that rapport with them pretty quickly because we have that similar lived experience, which is, I believe, maybe I'm biased, a great, beautiful thing. Love it. However, sometimes they will share with us some pretty intimate things that they are not willing to share with their caregivers or other members of the team. And that can kind of put us in a place as we are providers, right? And we're peer supporters. Like, how do we navigate that? And so that is one common thing that I see a lot. Ooh, Carolyn said yes. I'm telling you, it happens all the time. So oftentimes we're put in this position of like, hey, I trust you with this information, but I don't want it to go any further than that, right? And so we are bound by confidentiality, but also like, I don't want to make these caregivers mad if they find out I know, right? And so we have to kind of navigate that line of like, okay, what do we need to do with this information? What would it take for you to be willing to share this with your family, or maybe the parent supporter who's supporting your family, right? So that kind of comes up a lot. And sometimes it'll come up like later on and they're like, oh yeah, my peer supporter was aware of that. And it's like, well, why didn't they tell us? And it's like, well, sometimes it takes time, right? I can't just go and disclose this information that they trusted me with, or like we would never get this information ever again. So we kind of have to think about the bigger picture. And so we deal with this all the time as youth peer supporters. It's like, oh, well, why didn't you tell us? Another piece is that different lived experience, right? I just see things very different than Christy does. Like, she's my boss, and I'm just gonna say it out loud. I'm not a parent. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know what that looks like. That sounds like a lot of responsibility, to be 100% honest with you. But I know what it feels like to be that adolescent and I don't feel heard, right? Or people telling me what I have to do and all the things. Like, I really can relate to that. So we just have different views about that. And sometimes I can be biased against family members as well, right? So because of my own lived experience as a youth, I navigated challenging times where I was not comfortable sharing with my parents what was really going on. And so sometimes a youth peer supporter can kind of see like, hey, there's some dynamics, communication barriers, right? And that can kind of be one of the challenges between the youth peer supporter and the parent supporter. Like, oh, well, the parent's doing all the things. And it's like, well, they could be communicating more so with their adolescent about this, right? And so sometimes just that difference of that lived experience for sure. Sometimes we can see like the youth will share with us like how their family members may be interfering with their progress or services. And having to share that with a parent supporter, like being like, hey, some honest truth telling is what we call it. Like, this is what has been shared. You know, I have lived experience of my parents not knowing how to utilize these services, right? Can you support them in having that conversation? And that doesn't always go over well, right? The different perspectives of how to address needs. I love that somebody said in the Menti poll about like the identifying crisis in different ways, right? So oftentimes, like the parents will see something and they're like, oh, we are in full crisis mode. Like it is a really big deal. And then, you know, the youth peer supporter and the adolescent are like, no, we're kind of like baseline. Like this is kind of just where we're at right now. And that's okay. And I'm safe and all the things. I'm just not doing what they think I need to be doing. And is that a crisis? Well, from our perspective, it's not. That's not what a crisis looks like for them. But from the parent perspective, it very much is, right? So sometimes they're like, oh, well, they need a higher level of care. And it's like, well, the parent views it that way, and maybe some of the other team members, but the adolescent doesn't see it that way. And they would benefit from utilizing the services they already have, staying in the community. That kind of stuff can be some challenges where like we have to advocate on the youth's behalf of like, this is why we think that this is working, right? And so sometimes parent peer supporters, you know, they're supporting that family member and navigating like how to get this child's needs met. But we see it differently, right? And then a lot recently, I don't know why recently, but a lot recently, a lot of family members and parent support partners are not, they don't understand the value of harm reduction, right? Because I think that family perspective of like, oh no, right? Like we can't do this, like that's not an option on the table. And, you know, as that adolescent who had to utilize harm reduction for a long time to just be where I am today, I again see it very differently. And sometimes so does the adolescent. So those are some of the big ones that we were thinking of off the top of my hand. I know Christy's going to go into some of the more on the parent peer supporter side, but also like, I'll just throw it out there, like the age differential plays a big part a lot of times for us as young adults who we're new. We are brand new to the work field and we don't always know what we're doing. And so that can kind of play a role in this power differential as well, I believe. So advocating for somebody, you know, who's under the age of 18, right? And then ourselves being young adults, it just adds like an extra layer of, you know, some conflict and disagreements, and it definitely happens. So go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. My hope for you all is that either you have a Catherine in your life or you will get one. She is an amazing human, and I so appreciate her perspective because she's right. There's a lot of challenges and a lot of differences when it comes to work, and it's not all malicious or intentional. It happens. We're humans. So in honoring voice and choice, what we're referencing here is sometimes there might be situations where the parent peer supporter is supporting that parent or caregiver through a situation that they feel might be the best fit for their young person. So what Catherine was referencing about, I, as a parent, I might see that my kiddo is needing that higher level of care that might be residential placement because I'm feeling like I can't keep my child safe, or they're not safe with themselves, or these other things of how I view it versus how that young person might be viewing it, like what Catherine was saying. And then when it comes to doing the work as that parent peer supporter, being able to relay that to the youth peer supporter can look very differently of what that conversation is, how that conversation is held. That can be a sticking point and can be very challenging in that communication piece and could result in some type of conflict when we're talking about that. My purpose as the parent peer supporter is to hear what the parent is saying and to support them with that. And similarly for Catherine as the youth peer, she's doing the same thing for the young person. And so we don't always see eye to eye on that. And sometimes that not seeing eye to eye might be because of the power differential, because of that parent caregiver ideal in that role. And then the youth peer supporter maybe being viewed as a child in that ideal of a child. And that can also cause some conflict. And we've experienced some of that too, where sometimes the youth peer supporters might not be viewed as a professional. They might be viewed as just that other person helping out that young person, or where they are siding with, taking the side of that child or youth that is receiving the peer support or young adult. And the parent peer supporter, if they're not used to working with a youth peer support provider, that can be another sticking point and where conflict could arise. And we'll take some extra, probably supervision, coaching, some training, some one-on-one interactions, facilitated conversations, those types of things to kind of address that, because that one can really cause a lot of harm to the providers on the front line, and that's not something we want to support and deal with. Generational gaps, there might be some pieces of that playing into this too, where as an older adult, the older adults may, as a parent peer supporter, they may not have in their family culture the views of mental illness or mental health challenges, or even substance use challenges. They may have in their cultures been raised with just put your big girl panties on and get it done, or just stop drinking, or just don't use, whatever it might be. They may have that as a background and as a history in their culture. The hope is that when they're doing this work, that doesn't come forward. However, it could. And so honoring and recognizing that your personal lived and living experiences are going to impact how we do our work. And there may be some viewpoints of, with the youth peer supporter, not understanding today's youth. I don't know the language and I don't understand how they function that way, or why are they doing that? Because that my kid didn't do that, or I wouldn't do that. And finding the common ground in that can be really challenging. And so that can also bring forward some of the conflict that we might see between these two roles. And then with the professional boundaries, we're talking about how we do our work. Parent peer support providers might have a certain way of how they connect with and support their individual. Well, similarly, the youth peer supporter is going to have the same. They're going to have their own avenues, their own techniques of how they engage and support their young person that they're working with. It will most likely look very different than what the parent peer supporter does, and this can cause some heartburn among folks. So what I'm speaking of is the social media aspect. There are, I continue to learn, there are so many ways for youth peer supporters to connect with young people that fits in their culture and how they engage and interact and communicate with the world. And it's not something I'm familiar with or that I'm comfortable with, because it's not what I am experienced with. So when you have that parent peer supporter who may not have that level of experience or knowledge around social media, that can also be a challenge to navigate. There are ways to communicate and provide peer support through social media in a professional capacity. There's a lot of nuances behind it. However, it can be done. And that might not be in the forefront for a parent peer support provider necessarily, like it would be for a youth peer support provider. And also the aspect of playing games, the video games. We have several of our youth peer support providers that is the way they're able to engage with the young person that they're supporting, is through the video gaming platforms. And to see the outcomes of that is pretty incredible. However, that takes a minute. It might take a minute for parent peer support providers to get their heads wrapped around that. So when you're supporting a parent and you have that youth peer supporter that's supporting that young person, there will consistently be different ways of how you engage. The parent peer supporter might have the viewpoint of, I'm calling this individual every week, or meeting them in the community to have our, talk about what the things are that we need to discuss. And they may put that on the youth peer support provider to say, why are you not calling your young person every week? Why are you not meeting them in the community in person? And it's because we function differently. The youth peer support, like I said, might be utilizing the gaming platform to make their connection and to do their work. Or they might be doing certain things through social media that works for that particular individual and that youth peer. So these are some of the ways that we can see we've encountered some of the challenges and some areas for conflict, and it has, you know, I kind of have this puppy dog look sometimes of, okay, so we need to address that a little differently. So my hope again is that you all don't experience this, but we're human, it happens. And we want to share these lessons learned with you all that hopefully we can take away some more tidbits from today.
Yeah.
Billy?
Thank you both for that. Because it's real. And actually the last thing you said, I was like, you know, that's accurate. I've actually kind of gotten on to my high school senior about being online. And really, that may be where they were connecting with their community. So, so obviously there are areas where we are gonna disagree because we do things differently. And so that may cause conflict, that may cause disagreement, but it's also the beauty of it. And how, if we do collaborate together, how much stronger we are and how much more we can fully support a family as a whole. So part of what you have to do is think about, this is going to happen. So we need to plan for it. We need to be proactive. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. First and foremost, and this came up in the word cloud, roles and responsibilities. You know, establish some clarity about that. Be clear about who is responsible for what components of what you're doing. And that includes all the way down to like, who's going to document if we meet together? You know, when are we going to meet to talk about what's going on so that we can fully support this family in the way that they're wanting us to? You can do co-training because there's so many joint competencies that you have between the two types of peer support. Communication skills, you can talk about procedures and protocols for working within the same home at the same time, how you're going to address situations that test your ethics. There are a lot of ways that we can do co-training so that we're learning at the same time, and we're also learning how to work together as we're doing that. Develop and implement processes that promote collaboration in all those different ways that you work with a family. Things like meet together initially, and when you're learning about the family and you're learning about their belief system and what their strengths are, what their needs are, what their goals are, what they want to see happen, so that you're there as a team. And then you may have separate goals that you're working on, but you still have a team approach. And it's good to do that in both your program and within the agency. If you're within the same agency, you want to incorporate some opportunities to have supervision together on family related issues. That also gives you opportunities to problem solve together, both at the individual and at the program levels. It's important that supervisors also collaborate if you have separate supervisors and hold some type of joint supervision occasionally so that you can talk about having unified approaches with particular families or particular things that come up. You can be proactive in making sure that both types of peer support providers are trained in each other's perspectives, in what is happening with, and I love that Christy said today's youth, you know, what's happening in today's youth that you don't understand, like me not understanding what code switching was, but gosh, that makes so much sense. And I can see where I do it. I can see where my young person does it. So you want to have training on what that looks like and how relationships change as your young person gets older. How you as a parent have to start stepping back as the young person stepping up. Your role changes. And it's important to be trained on that. We had a, I guess kind of a learning opportunity between those who really were in like the young youth and young adult space and those who are in the parent space to ask what are their priorities. And they're different. Parents prioritize safety and youth and young adults prioritize independence. And so you can see where those would butt heads. But as Catherine said, that's not a crisis for me. It looks like a crisis for you, but it's not to me. And we have different perspectives. You want to make sure that you are equipping both of these roles with tools to use when they don't get along and when there is conflict. Not just between the two of them, but also when it happens between the youth and the parents that they're working with. It's good to have conflict resolution training, and it's good to have protocols in place for when this happens. Role play it. You know, we already have a good list of commonly what happens. And finally, ensure that there is fairness in access. Families should have the opportunity to choose what type of peer support they want. Not all families are going to want parent peer support. Not all youth are going to want youth peer support, but they should have that option. And access is something that remains an issue ongoing due to funding, due to geographic location, for lots of different reasons. So be proactive is the main point here. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Really, that was so great. Could we actually go back to your slide really fast?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I want y'all, if you can perceive the screen, like really look at these and really think about what Millie just said, because I think all of these are so critical, right? Conflicts are going to happen, and we're going to want to talk about my slide when we get there, like what do you do when it happens? But if we can avoid them, right? So much better, right? And even if conflicts happen and you've already done all these things, right? You do all of these things and conflicts still happen because it can. What this does, it lies down a better foundation to navigate through that conflict. So these are so important to avoid, yes, but also to navigate and again, lay that foundation of like healthy ways to engage if conflict happens either way. So I just think these are so important. And Millie, I just so appreciate you bringing all of these up. Okay, so we did all of those things. Conflict still happens. So what do we do when that arises, right? And we can do a lot of different things, right? As I said earlier, like I wish there was a magic wand. I wish there was a thing, one simple thing that we could do that would change everything and make everything better. There's not. Yeah, unfortunately. If there was, we would have done it, right? And so really what we're trying to do is just give y'all tools, different resources, things to think about. These may not work in every situation. They may work for somebody, it may not work for another people, right? So a lot of these, again, goes back to how is it fitting into your specific situation, your specific perspective, and really understanding the sort of unique and complexity of it all. So as we share these, just know that these are meant to be sort of broad tips. They're not meant to be an inclusive and exhaustive list or ways that will always work. I wish they did. Okay, we're in the conflict. What do we do? Well, there's a lot of different things that we can do. And what I really like about navigating conflict between sort of parent peer supporters and youth peer supporters is that a lot of these things are kind of universal, right? A lot of these things can apply to any conflict. And also sort of keep in mind, although what we're doing really right now is centering the differences between parent peer supporters, youth peer supporters, and how they can navigate conflict together, oftentimes, if they have a conflict, it's because that conflict originated, right, with the caregiver and the youth. So they are possibly in co-occurring conflict as well. And so y'all may be in sort of professional conflict, but you may get to leave, right? You may leave wherever these folks are they might not get that luxury, right? So think about how not only how it's important for y'all to resolve the conflict, but think about what might be happening at the home or wherever they're at, and that sort of co-occurring conflict of where maybe some of these came from to begin with. Okay, enough preamble. Let's get into it. So I find a good thing to do is assume good intention and to try to see multiple perspectives and hold multiple truths. And I think this is great. I think it's important. I think it's a good thing to do, and it's going to help you with conflict. I also think if I'm in conflict, I'm going to feel heated. I'm going to feel angry. I'm not necessarily thinking fully, right? Like I am just kind of like going for it. I oftentimes say, because I have pretty extreme anxiety and I speak for a living, that my mind, it runs like a mile per minute. And the space, both literally and figuratively, between my mind and my mouth can sometimes be very short. And things just kind of have a habit of flowing right on out. And especially when we're feeling increased emotions, when we're feeling activated, when we're feeling heated, when we're feeling in the moment, right? At least for me, an I statement, that space becomes smaller and smaller and it just comes out. So I think really what we mean by this first key point is as much as possible, slow down. When you feel your body, when you feel yourself in that sort of activation mode, when you feel like, oh, this is a conflict and I'm in it, try to recognize that and slow down. Do some breathing exercises and really think about when I'm thinking about it, it's different than when I say it. Because when I say it, that's an action, and there's a difference between intent and impact, right? I don't have to say what I'm thinking, but I have said it, I can't take it back, right? So really try to slow down, breathe, and think about, I'm just going to assume this person has good intentions. I'm going to try to hold multiple truths and multiple perspectives at once. And as we do that, I think it's always important in any circumstance, right? Anytime we're listening to another person, is to do just that. Listen. Oftentimes we don't, right? We're like processing what someone's saying to us and we're saying, oh, that pertains to me in XYZ fashion. And I remember this one time when I did XYZ and then, oh, but, and like we are so far gone from actually listening to that person in front of us because our mind is just going in the opposite direction. And then we see a squirrel and all bets are off, which is sometimes happening right behind me, right? And so again, active listening skills, focusing in on what that person is trying to say, understand the why, right? Why is so important, especially when we're talking about intergenerational relationships, right? Sometimes for older aging adults, it's this like, you don't need to know the why, you do it because I say it, right? But actually know the why is so much helpful. And why not know the why? There's no reason not to know the why, right? And so I think understanding the why is so important within conflicts, right? Understand where someone's coming from and why they're coming from that perspective will help us get on the same page. Seek clarity and understanding. The why helps with that, and not argument or invalidation in order to win, which is, something that I need to remember for any conflict I have in any portion of my life, right? So these again are good hints for any time that there's conflict, right? But really, you're trying to understand the why, you're trying to understand clarity. Don't view it as an argument. View it as a conflict. Conflicts happen, it's okay. Lean in, lean into the conflict because good can come from it. Learning can come from it. Growth can come from conflict. But an argument, if we frame it like that, it changes what we're trying to do. Now it's a competition. Now it's a debate, and we're trying to invalidate in order to win. So see it as a conflict and not an argument. And I know this has come up a lot. It's kind of been the theme for today, but most oftentimes that conflict is probably arising from these sort of two differing themes. Youth are going to want independence and self-agency and bodily autonomy. Why? Because they don't get a whole lot of it. And they're the experts on themselves, right? They're in crisis if that's how they're self-defining. And so they want to solve it in the way in which they want to solve it, right? And I just think like, gosh, isn't that for literally anybody? Agency, bodily autonomy, and control of yourself is so important. While oftentimes, right, our caregivers in our life, our older adults, our folks who are in different places are trying to kind of hold the whole, right? Like someone might be saying, listen, I'm having a panic attack and I can't go to school. I'm not going to go, right? And, the parent may be like, okay, yes, and you haven't gone for 2 weeks. If you don't go today, a truancy officer is going to call. That's going to spark a call to CPS, right? They still have this sort of holding the whole different perspective that is incredibly valuable as well, right? Because oftentimes they're dealing with that sort of day to day. And so it's just all to say, going back to all of these perspectives are valid. All of them can be true at the same time. And that's what we try to navigate together, right? As our sort of different youth peer supporters, our parent and caregiver peer supporters, that's what we try to navigate, is how to hold these both things as valid, but try to make them mesh, right? And, at the end of the day, these are probably the most important, right? Y'all are professionals, right? This isn't just an argument you've had with someone at the grocery store, right? This is an argument you're having with a colleague. This is an argument at work, right? So please remember to try to maintain professionalism. I don't necessarily always like that word. It can have some other connotations. So try to maintain respect. Try to maintain respect for each other, that partnership and authenticity is so important, right? I know we have our themes for the day and we also have our word for the day, which I think is code switching. So we all sort of adapt to different environments, to different people. But at the heart of what I think code switching is, it's the sacrifice of authenticity in order to conform to a new environment, to new people. And it's that sacrifice of authenticity that does harm. That's why code switching is bad, right? And so it's really based upon, how do I feel safe? How do I feel comfortable? How do I navigate fear? And so when we start to lose authenticity in the workplace, it is a slippery slope and it is so, so scary, right? So remember, this is your colleague. This is your colleague. You want them to bring their full holistic self and you want to respect and affirm that. And ultimately, if all else fails, ask to see the manager, right? So remember that there is hopefully a structure in place and supervision to be had. Okay, I know I've rambled, but I want to invite everybody in. Millie, Catherine, Christy, what have I missed? Does this resonate with you? Would you add anything to this?
I think you got it. I think you got it. I do think though that no, I think you got it. I was just gonna say, and Catherine's about to talk about this. I'm just gonna let her do that. Because it's a lesson learned from the field.
Awesome. Thank you. So, I mean, Millie started us off great with the being proactive piece. I don't love conflict. It is very stressful for me. Don't love it. Not about it, right? So I do anything and everything I can to try to like be proactive so I don't have to deal with it. Just like that's how I supervise people. Like I want them to be proactive because like I don't love it, right? And so when that is in place and we need to take it a step further and there is conflict or whatever it may be, handling it in that moment, right? Whew. Sometimes easier said than done, right? Sometimes it has to be handled like in that moment. Like I can't avoid it. I got to do it right now. But this term, Christy and I were in a pretty intense meeting about some conflict that had occurred. And how many of us, I'm gonna get y'all to raise your hands, how many of us got into this work because you're super passionate about what you do? Raise your hand, everybody. Hopefully everybody or the majority of everybody, right? So, I mean, that's one of our strengths, right? We are passionate. We want to advocate for individuals that we're supporting. And yes, all the things. Sometimes our passion can take a turn, right? To where we are not being respectful in that moment because we feel so passionate about something and having to advocate in that moment. And that is what our peer supporter did and was super passionate and, found something to be unjust and was advocating in a way that was not respectful. It happens, right? And so when we were meeting with this individual, I was like, look, like all your points are valid. Like, I hear you. I also would have been really heated in that moment and an opportunity to advocate afterwards. I don't know. It just came out of my mouth and I didn't even know what I was saying, but I was like, oh my gosh, that makes a lot of sense, right? So sometimes there's going to be an opportunity where like I'm activated, right? So like these are some of the times that where I've had to practice it. When I have a panic attack, because that is one of my mental health diagnoses, like I have panic attacks when I'm doing the work, right? Like I just do. Oftentimes not the time for me to advocate or like in that moment, because sometimes it can come out just kind of raw and not in the way it needs to come out, right? So sometimes you just need to pause. I just need a pause. Let me put it on me. I just need to take a pause, right? Another time is when it is really close and dear to my heart, right? A family member, so for me, a family member of the peer I'm supporting or the parent peer supporter, they are seeking ways to find higher levels of care, such as a residential. That's heavy for me, right? That was parts of my story, right? And I can feel with my peer, like, that's not what we want. That's not our goal. That's not what we're working towards. And that's a lot and heavy. And sometimes I want to be like, no, don't do this to them or us or however we want to think it, right? So I need to take a step back in that moment too. Like, hey, okay, this is what they're doing. They have a right to do that. They need to explore these services and options for this individual because their perspective is valid, right? And my peer and myself are probably in this moment, we just found out this information, not ready to have this conversation. We're not going to effectively advocate for ourselves and share our perspective. Okay, take a step back. So yeah, when you feel you may have like heightened emotions or like lose your cool. Yeah, it happens. Sometimes one of the things that I do is I'll write an email out and I won't send it. Right? You know, like one of those heated emails where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna tell them how it really needs to be and why I'm advocating and why I feel the way that I do. And then I don't send it. And then I delete like 90% of it later on, right? When I've had time to like look within of like what I need to actually be doing. So some of the ways that we need to practice this is that self-reflection, right? So for me, I'm a person in long-term recovery, right? And so like I have to look at myself and how these circumstances are impacting me personally, because we're all in this peer support world because of our lived experience. So like, what is my part in this is what I have to ask myself, right? So that self-reflection, self-awareness, what do I need to do for me, right? Do I need to take some time off? What do I need to do for my own wellness and well-being? Yes, please speak to a supervisor about the situation before you respond, because we don't want the situations where we got to kind of clean up. I don't like cleaning up the messes we've created. I've had to do it, so I'm speaking from experience. And it's all good intentions, right? I have great intentions, but like Tay was talking about, like the impact, right? Sometimes I don't understand fully the impact. And then sometimes we can just, after, right, some time, offer a collaborative conversation. You know, so with that situation, the young person and I, we don't think they need residential, right? We've got ideas of like, hey, maybe they could utilize these services, these outpatient supports. You know, they've got some natural supports, whatever it may be. And like have a conversation with the parent peer supporter and the family member, right? Like tell us more, right? Help me understand why you think this is what we need to do, right? But I have to be in a place where I can support and model for that young person to have that conversation appropriately, right? Because that's what we do as peer supporters is I get to model for them how to handle these conversations and these things in that moment, right? So sometimes being like, hey, let's circle back with this, right? Like heard your perspective. We need to take a walk. We're gonna go take a walk for a while, right? And we'll come back and readdress. We definitely don't want to ignore those feelings. Like for me personally, I can't ignore those feelings because they will really, really fester. And it really impacts my own well-being and wellness. So we need to address it in some way, shape, or form, but maybe the time's not right now. Maybe I gotta wait and pause. And don't send that email. That's what I tell myself. I'm like, just don't send the email, write it out, and just don't send it for a while. And it's working. It's working for me. So yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Tay, Christy, Millie?
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. All right. So we want to give you a chance to talk to each other about this. We're going to do breakout room discussions. We have enough time to do 20 minutes. We've developed scenarios for you to use. But please, if you're not able to participate in the breakout room, just kind of stay. You can be, muted off screen or whatever in this main room, so that we can better arrange the breakout rooms for people to fully have those conversations who want to do so today. We're going to drop into the chat 2 scenarios. What we want you to do is to review those scenarios and talk about strategies for addressing the conflict in the scenarios between the youth peer and the parent peer. The first one has to do with lack of communication, and the second one has to do with harm reduction. And I think Joanne's going to drop those in there, but I also have them right here just to quickly show you. So we've got questions after that. So read through the scenarios, identify what are the conflicts, how would you resolve this, and what strategies might be effective in preventing it from happening again and improving the collaboration. So I'm going to stop sharing. Make sure everybody, did I get dropped in the chat? I couldn't see the chat.
Yes, everything's in the chat.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So Joanne's going to put us into rooms. We'll do this for about 20 minutes and then come back and talk about it.
Welcome back, everyone. Oh gosh, I'm watching that participant list go up. Welcome back. I hope that was awesome and you all had fruitful conversations. So I'd love to have a big group debrief, but I'm going to pause a moment just to make sure everyone's back, everyone's situated, we feel good. Maybe we don't feel good, but at least we're here and we're present in the moment and we're going to do the thing. Okay, it seems like we are holding steady at 67. Okay, so we've got some time. I would say maybe like five minutes of time, but I really kind of want to hear, how are these scenarios? Now, I do want to know the answers to the questions, right? I want to know what the conflicts were. I want to know how you resolve the situations. I want to know about those strategies. And I think it'd be helpful for us to share that information too. But can I just ask broadly first, how were these? Were you like, yep, this is 1,000% happened before? Or like, oh no, I can't see this ever happening. How did the scenarios feel? Did they feel realistic? And you can put it in the chat or you can unmute.
I think they felt realistic for sure.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Pretty much realistic, except for the second one.
Second one. Okay.
Yeah, the second scenario. The second scenario was asking them not to do all the things that we do as peers. Maybe we were the group was kind of like stunned with it. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So stunned that there would be pushback on harm reduction
Yes,
practices.
pushback. Yeah, on harm reduction, but pushback on sharing our story. And I was even trying to go as far as saying maybe they was sharing the story incorrectly or wasn't sharing it at the right time. But pushback on harm reduction, well, I guess you could,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
I wouldn't. Just most recently, we had a group that wanted to put needle sharing or something like that in the same building in a room next door to a daycare center. Not needle sharing, but they could use their drugs safely next door to a daycare center in a room. And I wouldn't want to do that. And I'm like, I'd go, no, I don't want to do that. But I can't imagine you sharing your story in a way that could be harmful and not help it to be relatable. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I mean, listen, if we were going to be shocked by this scenario, I am happy we were shocked that they didn't want to share the resources. The reverse of that would have scared me. So I think that's kind of good news, at least to me. So I appreciate you sharing. So scenario 2, I'm hearing, come on, harm reduction is a thing. We know that it's helpful. It's sharing of information, right? It's not necessarily an endorsement. It's information. It's providing context and detail so folks can have agency to make decisions. So I love that. I appreciate that. What about scenario 1? Anyone have a take on scenario 1? I'm hearing it was realistic. What were kind of the conflicts there? Were there any shocks? Were you shocked by any of it? How would you have resolved it? Who wants to jump in for scenario 1?
I can jump in. Scenario 1, I feel like is actually, unfortunately, a more common problem than what people realize. I do think that youth in some situations and the youth support partner get not dismissed, but kind of are not the first train of thought when they're putting a team together. They're like, oh, let's get the therapist, let's do this, let's let the FSP. But the way I would handle that situation is really by, I mean, as a FSP, what our parent support partner, my first thing that I'm going to do is check and see, is there a YSP on the team, and opening that dialogue with them immediately, opening that communication with them. And I would almost email the case manager and make sure that she's aware, hey, did you make sure to invite this person and that person? So that's how I would go about it. And also have the youth support partner advocate for themselves and the youth.
Oh, Dina, I love everything about what you just shared. And I see you in the chat as well. And I love that comment. That's so great. And I think it goes back to a lot of those advocacy things that Catherine was talking about, right? Like advocate on behalf of your coworkers and your colleagues. If you see that they're not invited to the meeting, why? Advocate for them to be there. But I also love that sort of symbiotic mentorship too, of also like, here's how you can advocate on behalf of yourself as well, right? So we're all learning from each other. We're all advocating for each other because we're all in this work together. So I really, really love that. Okay, well, I know that wasn't a whole lot of time to talk to each other and debrief both together and in our breakout sessions. But gosh, this has just been a great session. And I just appreciate every time we come together. So let's close this out. We've got a few more slides and I got some homework again for you. But I really want us to focus on this closing reflection first, which is what makes your work and approach to that work unique, and how do you handle challenges? I really want y'all to take this away and to really think about these things. You know, you've spent an hour and a half with us. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And we're so glad that you're here, right? Because learning together, going to these webinars, it's so important. But I often find what's a little bit possibly more important than education is what you do with it, is those critical thinking skills, is those actions that go after the education, right? And so these can be great tips and tricks, but it's not going to matter if it just kind of closes out the webinar and it stays here, right? This is the knowledge we want to leave with you. And so really think about these things. Think about what you learned today and how it applies to your own work, to your own life. And I think having some of these 2 questions, just thinking about it, right? Before you go to bed, whatever, right? Just think about this. What makes your work and approach unique? And how do you handle challenges? And how can you incorporate some of the things that you've learned today? Or maybe you didn't like some of the things you learned today, right? So then what would you do instead, right? Have that critical thinking skills. Think about what those next steps and those action items are. And when we come back for section 3, I am hoping that you're going to bring some of those things that you've thought about, right? So bring with you those most common challenges in collaboration, write them down, right? And then we're going to really talk about it and focus on it as we go through how to collaborate, right? What are those collaboration strategies? And we're going to apply it to an action plan, right? Because again, knowledge is power. What you do with it is so incredibly important too. So we want you to leave with some sort of tangible thing at the closeout of these 3 sessions. And so we're going to build an action plan together in the next session. but we need your help. So do the homework and bring it with you. And when is that session, right? So that session is March 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We're excited about it. We hope that you'll come back for us, with us, and join us and to be in community again. And I think I have like maybe 3 more slides to get through before 30 minutes in. Okay, so lots of questions, right? There's going to be some cool follow-ups via email, right? So we're going to get you a certificate of completion. We're going to get you a copy of the presentation as well. And we did record this webinar. I am not quite sure if that will go out or not. That is going to be, I think, an internal conversation that we'll decide, but we know that we'll definitely be getting you a copy of the presentation and the certificate of completion. I think the next one is socials. Did I get that right? No. Okay, your feedback is important. So we've got an evaluation that's also going to be coming to you. Please fill those out, right? Learning and growing and those leading into conflicts, right? Constructive feedback helps us learn and grow. So please fill out that evaluation survey that's going to come over to you. It helps us change things. There it is. And then follow us, like and subscribe, right? Follow us on all of the socials because it really matters, right? It really means we come together as a community and share this information. So, yep, I hope that you will follow us. And thank you so much. Please reach out anytime. It was a pleasure having all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.